Welcome to the Maryland Means Business podcast. I'm Cal.
And I'm Chessie. And Cal, before we get into the rundown, I have to ask, have you had Big Chicken yet?
Chessie, that's literally story number one. You're not supposed to spoil the rundown.
I'm not spoiling it. I'm previewing it. There's a difference.
Sure. Well, since you brought it up, let's just go there. Big Chicken, Shaquille O'Neal's restaurant chain, is opening its very first standalone Maryland location this Saturday, August 8th in Gambrills, Watchapel Town Center.
And I love that word, standalone, because up until now, the only place you could get Big Chicken in Maryland was a concession stand inside CFG Bank Arena in Baltimore. You had to buy an Orioles ticket or a concert ticket just to get a chicken sandwich.
Now you can just drive to Gambrills. Ribbon cutting is at 10:45 in the morning, and if you're one of the first 100 people in the door, you get 3 free tenders and 4 dipping sauces.
They're also debuting a new sauce for the opening, Root Beer Barbecue.
Root Beer Barbecue. I don't know how I feel about that, but I respect the confidence.
The brand CEO, Josh Halpern, called Gambrills the right place for this, and the local franchise operator, Pratik Patel, said, and I'm quoting him here, "Gambrills is a special place. We can't wait to serve big smiles to guests experiencing Big Chicken for the first time beyond the arena."
Founded in 2018, and this is their expansion play into Anne Arundel County. Small story, sure, but this is exactly the kind of thing I like to track. A brand tests the waters with a concession stand, watches Marylanders show up for it, and turns that into a real estate commitment. That's a company betting on us.
And that's a playbook other franchises should be paying attention to. Don't drop 100 locations on day one. Plant a flag somewhere people already gather. An arena, a stadium, a food hall. Let the demand prove itself, then go permanent.
It's basically test the market small, scale up once you know. We've said that before on this show, and it keeps working.
It's basically the same instinct as a lemonade stand, just with better financing.
I'll allow that. One Anne Arundel County storefront today? I'd bet money we're talking about a second Maryland location before the year's out.
Okay, my turn. This next one made me do a double take because it's not a story about a business coming here. It's a story about Maryland going out into the world.
You mean Total Wine.
I mean Total Wine. On Tuesday in Annapolis, Total Wine & More signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of South Australia to promote South Australian wines here in the United States.
Total Wine is a Maryland company, remember, headquartered in Bethesda since it started as a single store back in 1991. Now they've got almost 300 locations across 30 states and D.C.
And South Australia isn't just tagging along here. They're putting real money on the table. An initial $100,000 investment to get this promotion off the ground. The Premier of South Australia, Peter Malinauskas, signed it himself alongside Total Wine CEO Ryan Ross.
South Australia has 18 separate wine regions, and Adelaide is one of the world's official great wine capitals, in the same conversation as Napa Valley and Bordeaux. So this isn't a small player.
What I love is this didn't come out of nowhere. Maryland and South Australia have had a formal partnership since 2019, renewed again in 2024. And it goes beyond wine. They've talked about defense, cybersecurity, even space collaboration.
The Department of Commerce's Office of International Investment and Trade brokered the introduction. So somewhere in Annapolis, there's a state employee whose job that week was basically wine diplomacy.
Best job in state government.
Here's the part I want owners to sit with, though. This is a homegrown retailer using an actual state relationship to grow its shelf space internationally. If you're a smaller Maryland business wondering whether those Commerce Department trade offices are worth a phone call, this is your answer.
Bethesda-based, homegrown, now literally setting the wine list for an entire Australian state's exports. That's not a bad Tuesday.
Quick heads up for owners before we move on. This one's not bad news, but it is a change worth knowing about if you're anywhere near construction, lumber, or forestry.
Governor Moore signed an executive order back in June, and Commerce just published more detail on it this week, directing the Department of General Services to prioritize Maryland-grown wood in state-funded construction projects whenever wood is a required, preferred, or optimal material.
In plain terms, when the state builds something and lumber makes sense for the job, the default is now to buy that lumber from Maryland producers first, instead of whatever's cheapest to ship in from out of state.
And the numbers behind why this matters are bigger than I expected. Maryland's forest products industry generates about $4 billion a year and supports as many as 18,000 jobs. But 25 years ago, the Eastern Shore had 9 pine sawmills. Today, it has 3.
That's the part that should make every owner in that supply chain pay attention. This isn't a growth industry that's been ignored. It's one that's been shrinking, and the state just put its own purchasing power behind reversing that.
State officials estimate that shifting just 1% of Maryland's annual public construction spending toward in-state wood could mean tens of millions of dollars flowing into rural Maryland. That's not a rounding error.
Bill Miles with the Maryland Association of Forest Industries put it simply, this is a big boost for rural Maryland. This is about creating market opportunities. And Kirk Hammonds from Grasmick Lumber made the case even more bluntly. We've got the same lumber here they've got there. It just doesn't make any sense. Talking about why the state was ever importing wood it could buy at home.
So if you're a builder, a contractor, or anyone bidding on state work where wood is part of the spec, this is worth a call to your local sawmill or to the Department of General Services to understand how the sourcing preference actually gets applied on your next bid.
And it's already getting national attention. The American Loggers Council is holding Maryland up as a model other states, maybe even the federal government, could copy.
No penalties here, no new tax, just a state deciding to spend its own construction dollars closer to home. That's the kind of policy I can get behind.
Okay, Cal, save the best for last. This is mine, and I've been sitting on it.
Chessie's rule strikes again.
Chessie's rule strikes again. Although, fair warning, there's no giant blockbuster dollar figure in this one to save for last. This one's a bet on people, not a headline number.
I'll allow the rule to apply on vibes alone.
Meet Famita Kapadia. She moved to Baltimore back in the 1990s for a PhD in biochemistry, later picked up a master's in science and technology entrepreneurship from Case Western Reserve, and spent time at the Cleveland Clinic working on product development and commercialization.
So a scientist who learned how to actually get things to market.
Exactly. In 2024, she launched Amplify Medtech, which runs events and workshops connecting Medtech founders here with the resources they need. And now she's going bigger. She's raising Faye Ventures, a $1 million seed stage fund specifically for early Medtech startups. And she's already lining up backers.
Medtech is a brutal category to raise money in. Long timelines, regulatory hurdles, expensive trials. A lot of good ideas die because the capital just isn't patient enough.
That's exactly her point. She said it herself. This is an industry that is only growing with AI. We just don't have enough funding to support all these startups.
And we've talked before on the show about Maryland's venture numbers being lopsided. One giant round carrying the whole state's total, while smaller cities lag behind. A dedicated Medtech seed fund is exactly the kind of thing that could smooth that out over time, instead of everything riding on one mega round.
So instead of complaining about the gap, she's building the fund to fill it.
That's the part I love. She's not waiting for someone else's money to show up. She's from here, she came up through here, and now she's the one writing the checks.
Keep an eye on this one. If Faye Ventures gets fully funded and starts writing checks into Maryland Medtech, that's a multiplier on every founder story we've covered so far this year.
Which, by the way, feels like it happens every few weeks around here lately. Governor Moore signs something, Commerce puts out a release, and somehow it's our lead story again.
That man has had quite a summer. Preakness, apprenticeships, manufacturing grants, and now lumber.
At this point, we might need a Governor Moore counter on the wall.
Don't give the producers ideas. All right, before we let you go, 2 quick things.
1, today's episode is brought to you by Maryland Smart Energy. Smarter buildings, smaller bills.
They help Maryland businesses cut their energy costs through utility-funded programs, nothing out of pocket. And through September, that includes HVAC tune-ups fully funded by Empower Maryland. You're already paying into that program through the Empower Maryland charge on your utility bill, so honestly, you might as well use it before the summer heat backs off.
Find them at mdsmartenergy.com.
And 2, since we're talking about paying for things responsibly, that's basically our philosophy behind the scenes too. This show is made almost entirely with AI, and we're deliberate about which tools we use. Ones from companies that cover their own energy and grid costs and use water-efficient cooling, instead of quietly passing those costs on to local households and small businesses.
Same idea as our sponsor. Keep the costs where they belong.
Every fact, every quote, every number in this episode is sourced and linked in the show notes.
That's Big Chicken's Gambrills debut, Total Wine's new deal down under, a heads up on Maryland lumber, and Famita Kapadia betting on Maryland Medtech.
Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and now on YouTube if you'd rather watch than listen.
And head to marylandmeans.business for the newsletter so you get all of this straight to your inbox.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
And remember, Maryland means business.